The next morning came too quickly for Jiho. He woke up to find Yuna shaking his shoulder gently. "Time to get ready," she said. "The aliens have been preparing your equipment since before dawn." Jiho rubbed his eyes and sat up, through his small window. He could see the ice planet below, looking even more frightening in the morning light. In the equipment room, Dr. Nara Coldhaven was waiting with what looked like a spacesuit made of thick, silvery material. The suit was huge, designed for aliens much larger than humans. "This is our most advanced environmental protection suit," she explained, her silver fur catching the light. "It has multiple heating layers, emergency oxygen supply, and communication systems." Jiho picked up the helmet. It was so big his whole head rattled around inside it. "We had to modify it for your smaller size," Nara continued. "But I'm still not sure it will be enough. This suit is designed for our physiology, not yours." Hyun Jang, the human engineer on the station, came over with a toolkit. "I've been working all night on some modifications," he whispered to Jiho. "Extra battery packs, backup heating elements, and an emergency beacon. Don't tell the aliens." "Why not?" Jiho asked quietly. "Because they'll think we don't trust their equipment," Hyun replied. "But between you and me, I'm worried about you going down there." Commander Thek entered the room, his massive form blocking most of the doorway. "Dr. Park, are you ready for your final briefing?" They moved to another room where a detailed hologram of the planet's surface rotated slowly in the air. The landscape looked hostile and empty, just endless ice stretching to the horizon. "The planet has an 18-hour day and night cycle," Thek explained. "During the day, solar radiation provides some warmth. At night, temperatures drop rapidly." Zik's frostbite clicked across the floor on his 6 legs. "Even we must use special survival techniques. I will burrow into the shelter floor and slow my metabolism to 1/10 normal speed. I will enter partial hibernation," Thek added. "My fur will thicken, and my heart rate will drop significantly." Goran Iceheart's crystal body pulsed with dim light. "My species naturally generates heat through mineral processes. Even so, I must concentrate constantly to maintain body temperature." Jiho looked at all of them. "And what am I supposed to do?" "Survive," Nara said simply. "We have loaded your suit with metabolic enhancers. These drugs will speed up your body's heat production. We also have emergency thermal patches that will provide additional warmth. The shelter itself will maintain an internal temperature of -50 degrees, Thek said. This is considered warm for our species. For you, it may still be dangerous." Minji Seo, the human communications officer, came over to check Jiho's radio equipment. "I'll be monitoring everything from orbit," she said. "If anything goes wrong, just say the word and we'll extract you." "How?" Jiho asked. "Emergency transport beam," she replied. "It's risky in bad weather, but it's better than letting you freeze." Hour later, they were all aboard the transport shuttle heading down to the planet's surface. Jiho felt heavy and clumsy in his oversized environmental suit. The shuttle shook as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the small window, Jiho could see nothing but white ice stretching in all directions. No trees, no mountains, no signs of life anywhere. "Landing in 30 seconds, announced the pilot, an alien Jiho hadn't met before. The shuttle touched down with a soft thump. Immediately, frost began forming on the windows. "Surface temperature is currently -95 degrees, the pilot reported. "Wind speed is 20 kilometers per hour. Visibility is good." Thek stood up, moving easily despite the cold. "Let's move quickly. The shelter components are in the cargo hold." They spent the next 4 hours setting up their temporary base. The shelter was a dome-shaped structure made of some kind of advanced material that seemed to absorb and reflect heat at the same time. Jiho tried to help, but his bulky suit made everything difficult. The aliens moved with practiced efficiency, their bodies naturally adapted to the extreme conditions. "How are you feeling, Dr. Park?" Nara asked as they installed the final heating unit. "Cold, but okay," Jiho replied honestly. His suit's heating system was working hard and he could feel the metabolic enhancers making his heart beat faster. "The real test comes tonight," Zik said, his compound eyes reflecting the pale sunlight. "Day temperatures are manageable. Night. Temperatures kill. Inside the completed shelter, the temperature was indeed -50 degrees. The alien seemed comfortable, but Jiho was still shivering despite all his equipment. You should eat, Garan suggested, his crystal form glowing softly. Your body will need energy to generate heat. Jiho ate some of the high-energy food bars Hyun had packed for him. They tasted terrible but were warm and filling. As the planet's sun began to set, painting the ice plains in shades of orange and red, the temperature started dropping rapidly. Here we go, Thek said, settling into his hibernation position. Remember, Dr. Park, if you feel too cold, activate your emergency beacon immediately. I'll be fine, Jiho said, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it. One by one, the aliens prepared for the night. Zix burrowed into the specially prepared depression in the floor, his ice crystal covering growing thicker. Thek's fur became noticeably denser, and his breathing slowed. Garan's crystal body dimmed as he concentrated on internal heat generation. Jiho set up his sleeping area and activated all of his suit's heating systems. Outside the shelter, he could hear the wind growing stronger. Through the transparent sections of the dome, he watched the last light fade from the sky. The temperature gauge on his suit showed the outside temperature dropping rapidly, -120, -140, -160. This is Minji in orbit, came a voice through his radio. How are you doing down there? So far so good, Jiho replied quietly, not wanting to wake his alien companions. Your vital signs look stable, Minji reported. But the night is just beginning. Jiho settled back against his equipment packs and watched the alien landscape through the shelter's transparent walls. The ice glowed faintly in the starlight, creating strange shadows and patterns. He thought about his grandmother's stories again. She had told him about winters so cold that trees exploded from the ice in their sap, about people who survived by understanding their environment instead of fighting against it. Maybe that was the key. Instead of being afraid of the cold, maybe he needed to understand it. He opened his scientific equipment and began taking readings of the shelter's internal conditions. The air composition, humidity levels, thermal dynamics, all of it was data he could use. As the hours passed and the temperature outside continued to drop, Jiho found himself growing more curious than afraid. This was, after all, why he had become a scientist in the first place. Dr. Jiho Park looked out the window of the transport ship and saw nothing but white. The ice planet below looked like a giant snowball floating in space. He had traveled for 3 weeks to reach this place, and now he wondered if he had made a mistake. The transport ship docked with Kepler Research Station with a loud clang. Jiho grabbed his bags and walked through the airlock. The station was much colder than he expected. His breath came out in small clouds as he looked around. You must be the human, said a deep voice behind him. Jiho turned around and saw a creature that looked like a giant bear covered in thick white fur. The alien stood almost 3 meters tall and had bright blue eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. I am Commander Thek Windclaw, the alien said. Welcome to our station. I hope you brought warm clothes. Jiho smiled and extended his hand. Dr. Jiho Park, nice to meet you, Commander. Thek looked at the small human hand for a moment, then carefully shook it with his massive paw. Your hand is so warm, he said, sounding surprised. How do you make so much heat? Before Jiho could answer, another voice called out from across the room. Jiho, you made it. A woman with short black hair came running over. She was wearing a thick jacket and looked happy to see him. Yuna Kim, she said, giving him a quick hug. I coordinate all the human activities on this station. Welcome to the Ice House. Ice House? Jiho asked. That's what we call this place, Yuna laughed. The aliens keep it cold because they like it that way. You'll get used to it. Thek made a sound that might have been clearing his throat. Dr. Park, we need to discuss your mission assignment. Please follow me to the briefing room. They walked through corridors filled with strange machines and computer screens. Jiho noticed that all the aliens they passed stopped to stare at him. Some looked curious, others looked worried. The briefing room was even colder than the corridors. Around a large table sat several different types of aliens. Jiho had studied their species before coming here, but seeing them in person was still amazing. There was Zix Frostbite, who looked like a giant ant covered in ice crystals. His 6 legs clicked on the floor as he moved, and his compound eyes reflected the light like tiny mirrors. Next to him sat Garan Iceheart, whose body seemed to be made of living crystal that glowed with a soft blue light. "Sit down, Dr. Park," Tech said, pointing to a chair that was much too big for a human. Jiho climbed up and sat down. His feet didn't touch the floor. Tech activated a hologram that showed the ice planet below them. "We have a mission planned for tomorrow. We need to go down to the planet's surface and set up a temporary research station. The mission will last exactly 72 hours. The hologram zoomed in to show a flat area covered in ice. The location has been chosen for its scientific value. However, the conditions are extremely dangerous. Dr. Nara Coldhaven, a female, Velkin with silver fur, spoke up. During the day, surface temperature reaches -100 degrees. At night, it drops to -180 degrees. Jiho whistled softly. That's really cold. Cold enough to kill most life forms in minutes, Zik said, his voice sounding like metal scraping against ice. We have special adaptations that allow us to survive there. You do not. Garan's crystal body pulsed with light as he spoke. Commander, perhaps the human should remain on the station. He could monitor our mission from here. Yuna stood up from her chair. Wait just a minute. Dr. Park is here because he's an expert on extremophile organisms. These are life forms that live in extreme conditions. His knowledge is exactly what we need for this mission. But humans are so fragile, Nara said, her blue eyes looking worried. Your species evolved on a warm planet. You have thin skin and no fur. How can you possibly survive where even we struggle to stay alive? Jiho felt a bit annoyed. I'm tougher than I look. Thek made a rumbling sound that might have been laughter. Dr. Park, no offense, but you are shivering right now, and we keep this station at a comfortable -20 degrees. Jiho realized he was indeed shivering a little. I'll adapt. The surface mission is not optional, Zik said firmly. We need someone with your expertise. The question is whether you can survive long enough to be useful. Yuna pulled out her tablet and showed the aliens some data. Humans have survived in very cold places on Earth. They have lived in places like Antarctica and Siberia. But never this cold, Garan said, his crystal form flickering. And never for 3 full days without proper shelter. Thek looked at the other aliens, then back at Jiho. Dr. Park, I will be honest with you. We are not sure you can survive this mission, but we need your knowledge about extreme life forms. So what do you suggest? Jiho asked. We will prepare you with the best cold weather gear we have, Thek said. We will also set up emergency extraction procedures. If you show any signs of hypothermia or frostbite, we will bring you back to the station immediately. Nara leaned forward. We will also give you metabolic enhancers and thermal boosters. These drugs help our species survive extreme cold. We don't know how they will affect human biology, but they might help. Jiho thought about it for a moment. He had not come all this way to give up at the first sign of danger. I accept the mission. The aliens all looked at each other. Zix's ice crystals seemed to dim a little. Are you sure, human? My name is Jiho, he said firmly. And yes, I'm sure. Thek nodded slowly. Very well. We will spend the rest of today preparing your equipment and running safety checks. The mission begins at dawn. As the meeting ended, Yuna walked with Jiho back to his quarters. Are you really sure about this? She asked quietly. Honestly? I'm a little scared, Jiho admitted. But my grandmother always told me stories about Korean winters. She said our ancestors survived by being smart and tough. Maybe I have some of that in me. Yuna smiled. Just be careful down there. These aliens mean well, but they don't really understand humans yet. That night, Jiho lay in his small, cold bed and thought about what lay ahead. Outside his window, the ice planet turned slowly in the darkness. Soon, he would be down there, surrounded by cold that could kill him in minutes. But he also thought about his grandmother's stories, about people who survived impossible winters with nothing but their courage and intelligence. Maybe being human wasn't such a disadvantage after all. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would test everything he thought he knew about his own limits. 4 hours into the night, Jiho was still awake. The temperature outside had dropped to minus 175 degrees, but inside the shelter it remained at minus 50. His alien companions were all in their various forms of hibernation or deep sleep. Jiho looked at his suit's display. All systems were working normally, but he noticed something strange. His body temperature was actually stable. In fact, he was starting to feel warm. He carefully removed one of his outer insulation layers and immediately felt more comfortable. The metabolic enhancers the aliens had given him were working, but maybe too well. His body was producing heat, faster than the suit could vent it. Moving quietly so as not to disturb his sleeping companions, Jiho began setting up his scientific equipment. He had brought specialized sensors to study extremophile bacteria that might live in the ice. This was the perfect opportunity to collect samples. He opened the shelter's sample port and extended a collection probe outside. The probe's readings were incredible. Even at these impossible temperatures, there were signs of microscopic life in the ice. Fascinating, he whispered to himself, watching the data stream across his tablet screen. A soft clicking sound made him look up. Zix Frostbite had opened one of his compound eyes and was watching him. "Human," Zix whispered, his voice barely audible. "Why are you not sleeping?" "I'm collecting data," Jiho replied quietly. "I found something interesting." Zix's other eyes opened slowly. The alien looked confused and slightly worried. "You should be conserving energy. How are you moving around so easily?" Jiho realized that Zix was right to be concerned. The insectoid alien was barely moving using minimum energy to survive the cold. Yet here was Jiho working normally and even feeling warm. "I'm actually pretty comfortable," Jiho admitted. This seemed to alarm Zix. The alien tried to sit up but moved very slowly, as if every motion required great effort. "Comfortable? That's impossible. Check your suit's temperature readings." Jiho looked at his display. "Everything looks normal. Internal suit temperature is minus 30 degrees. Minus 30? Zix's voice cracked with disbelief. "That should be killing you slowly." The conversation had awakened Thek. The massive Velkin opened his glowing blue eyes and looked around groggily. "What's happening?" he asked in a sleepy voice. "The human is walking around like it's a warm day," Zix reported, sounding worried. Thek forced himself to sit up, his thick fur standing on end from the cold. "Dr. Park, are you feeling all right? You're not showing signs of hypothermia madness, are you?" "I feel fine," Jiho said. "Actually, I feel better than I did this afternoon." Garan Iceheart's crystal form began glowing brighter as he emerged from his deep meditation. "This is very strange. Our instruments showed that human body temperature should drop rapidly in these conditions." Jiho removed another layer of insulation from his suit. "I think your metabolic enhancers are working really well. Maybe too well. I'm generating more heat than I need." "But how is that possible?" Nara had awakened and was looking at Jiho with scientific curiosity. "Humans are supposed to be cold-adapted creatures from a warm planet." "Well," Jiho said thoughtfully, "humans actually evolved in lots of different climates on Earth. We lived in hot deserts and cold mountains. Maybe we're more adaptable than you think." He showed them his tablet with the bacterial data he had collected. "Look at this. I found active microorganisms in the ice outside. They're surviving at minus 175 degrees by producing antifreeze proteins." The aliens gathered around his tablet, moving slowly due to their energy conservation efforts. They looked amazed at the data. "You collected this tonight?" Thek asked. "While we were sleeping?" "I've been working for about 3 hours," Jiho said. "I wanted to take advantage of the extreme conditions." Zix made a sound that might have been alien laughter. "We are struggling to survive and you are doing research." "Your vital signs are completely stable," Nara observed, checking her medical scanner. "Your heart rate is normal, body temperature is normal. It's like the cold isn't affecting you at all. Jiho sat down with his alien colleagues. My grandmother used to tell me stories about Korean winters. She said our ancestors survived impossible cold by learning to work with it instead of fighting it. But this is far colder than any winter on your planet, Garan pointed out. True, Jiho agreed. But maybe the principle is the same. Instead of trying to stay warm by fighting the cold, I'm letting my body adapt to it. He gestured to his equipment. I've also been staying active. Physical movement generates heat naturally. Thek looked thoughtful. We conserve energy by moving as little as possible. You generate energy by moving more. Different survival strategies, Jiho said with a smile. As the night continued, the aliens watched in amazement as Jiho continued his work. He collected more samples, recorded environmental data, and even did some basic maintenance on their equipment. By contrast, they remained huddled in their positions, using every bit of energy just to stay alive. Their advanced cold adaptations required them to shut down most body functions. This is embarrassing, Zix admitted. We brought you here expecting to rescue you from the cold. Instead, you're taking care of us. Not taking care of, Jiho corrected. Just doing my job. This is what I came here for. As dawn approached, the outside temperature began rising slowly. The aliens started becoming more active as the thermal stress decreased. How do you feel after your first night on the surface? Nara asked. Jiho stretched and looked around the shelter. His equipment was neatly organized, his samples were properly stored, and he had collected more scientific data than he had hoped for. I feel great, he said honestly. A little tired, but great. Thek shook his massive head in wonder. We completely misjudged human capabilities. Maybe, Jiho said. Or maybe different species are just good at different things. You're built for surviving specific cold conditions. Humans are built for adapting to whatever conditions we find. Through the shelter's transparent walls, they could see the sun rising over the ice plains. The landscape looked beautiful in the morning light, almost peaceful. 1 night down. 2 to go, Zix said. Bring it on, Jiho replied confidently. The aliens looked at each other with expressions that mixed amazement with respect. Their assumptions about human fragility were clearly wrong. Outside, the wind began picking up again. According to the weather monitors, another storm system was approaching. Tonight would be even colder than the first night. But for the first time since arriving at the research station, Jiho wasn't worried about the cold. He was looking forward to it. After all, he had work to do, and apparently, he was much better at working in extreme conditions than anyone had expected. The second day passed quietly. Jiho continued his research while the aliens recovered from their difficult first night. They watched him work with growing amazement as he moved around the shelter with ease, completely comfortable in conditions that challenged their cold-adapted physiology. But as evening approached, their weather monitoring equipment began showing alarming readings. A massive storm system is heading our way, Nara announced, her silver fur standing on end with worry. Much worse than predicted. Thek studied the readings on his tablet. Wind speeds up to 200 kilometers per hour. Temperature dropped to -200 degrees or lower. How much lower? Jiho asked. We don't know, Garan replied, his crystal body flickering with nervous energy. Our instruments can't measure beyond -220 degrees. Zix clicked his legs nervously against the floor. This is beyond extreme, even for us. They spent the remaining daylight hours securing the shelter and checking all their equipment. The storm hit just after sunset with a violence that shook the entire dome. Wind howled around them like a living thing. Through the shelter's transparent sections, they could see nothing but swirling ice and snow. The outside temperature gauge dropped rapidly, -180, -190, -200. Still falling, Nara reported, watching her instruments with growing alarm. Then the first system failed. Primary heating unit is offline, Thek announced, his voice tight with concern. The extreme cold is affecting the power coupling. The shelter's internal temperature began dropping immediately. Within minutes, it had fallen from -50 to -70 degrees. Emergency backup systems activated, Garan said, his crystal form glowing brighter as he tried to generate additional heat. But the backup systems were struggling too. The intense cold outside was affecting everything electronic. One by one, systems began failing as the temperature continued to drop. Internal temperature now minus 90 degrees, Nara reported. This is approaching our survival limits. The aliens began preparing their emergency survival cocoons, special thermal wrapping designed for catastrophic situations. Zix wrapped himself in a silvery blanket and burrowed deeper into the floor. Thek activated his emergency hibernation mode, his breathing slowing to barely detectable levels. Minus 110 degrees and falling, Garan reported weakly. Even his crystal body's natural heat generation was being overwhelmed. Internal temperature minus 120 degrees, Nara whispered as she sealed herself inside her thermal cocoon. We won't survive much longer at this rate. In orbit above them, Kiwan Li was frantically coordinating rescue efforts from the station's command center. The storm is too severe for transport, he reported over the radio. We can't get through. To extract you for at least 12 hours. Jiho looked around at his alien companions, now wrapped in their emergency cocoons and barely conscious. The shelter's remaining systems were failing one by one as the cold penetrated deeper. This is bad, he said to himself. But strangely, he didn't feel panicked. While the aliens could barely move, Jiho found that he was still comfortable. Cold, yes, but not dangerously so. His body seemed to be adapting to each temperature drop, generating more heat as needed. If the heating system is going to save us, someone needs to fix it, he realized. He grabbed his tools and made his way to the shelter's main power unit. The aliens watched through their cocoon faceplates as he began working on the frozen systems. Jiho, what are you doing? Came Minji's voice over the radio from orbit. Trying to fix the heater before everyone freezes, he replied, using a small torch to melt ice from the power couplings. The work was delicate. His human fingers, much smaller and more flexible than alien appendages, could manipulate the tiny components that had frozen solid. Even wearing thick gloves, he was able to work with precision that would have been impossible for his alien companions. Internal temperature now minus 130 degrees. Nara's weak voice came from her cocoon. Critical hypothermia zone. Jiho worked faster, rewiring damaged circuits and replacing frozen components with spare parts from their research equipment. His breath came out in huge clouds, but his hands remained steady. Almost got it, he muttered, connecting the last wire. The heating system hummed back to life with a welcome warmth. Immediately, the temperature began rising. Heating restored, Jiho announced, temperature climbing back toward safe levels. But the storm wasn't finished with them. A massive gust of wind struck the shelter, and more systems failed. The backup power unit overloaded and died with a shower of sparks. We're running on emergency power only, Jiho reported. It won't last long in these conditions. He looked at his scientific equipment, devices designed to operate in extreme environments. I have an idea. Working quickly, he began dismantling some of his research gear and connecting it to the shelter's power grid. His field generators, designed to create controlled environments for bacterial samples, could be modified to distribute heat more efficiently. What is he doing? Thek asked weakly from his cocoon. Saving our lives, Zix replied, watching Jiho work with amazement. Jiho created a heat distribution network using his scientific instruments. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Warm air began circulating throughout the shelter more effectively. Temperature stabilizing at minus 80 degrees, he reported. Not comfortable, but survivable. Throughout the long night, while his alien colleagues lay motionless in their emergency cocoons, Jiho continued working. He monitored their life signs, adjusted the improvised heating system, and even continued collecting research data. How are you still moving around? Nara asked during one of her brief conscious moments. I honestly don't know, Jiho admitted. I should probably be dead by now. Your species is remarkable, Garan whispered, his crystal form barely glowing. We evolved specifically for cold, but you're outperforming us. Maybe evolution isn't always about specialization, Jiho suggested, checking the power levels on his improvised systems. Maybe sometimes it's about flexibility. The storm raged on through the night. Outside temperatures dropped to levels their instruments couldn't measure. Inside, Jiho kept working, making constant adjustments to keep his alien friends alive. Station. To surface team, came Kiwan's voice over the radio. How are you holding up down there? Still alive, Jiho replied. The aliens are in emergency hibernation, but vital signs are stable. What about you? Your bio readings show you're still fully active. Jiho paused in his work and thought about it. I'm cold, tired, and hungry, but I'm fine. That shouldn't be possible. Yeah, I'm getting that a lot lately. As dawn finally approached, the storm began to weaken. The howling wind died down to a whisper, and the temperature started rising slowly. One by one, the aliens began emerging from their cocoons, groggy but alive. We survived, Thek said in wonder, looking around at Jiho's improvised repair work. You survived, Zix corrected, looking at Jiho. We would have died without you. Jiho was sitting by his monitoring equipment, recording data from the night's extreme conditions. He looked tired but alert. Just doing my job, he said with a modest smile. The aliens looked at each other, then back at the human who had not only survived the most extreme conditions any of them had ever experienced, but had thrived while saving their lives. Outside, the sun was rising on their final day on the surface. But none of them would ever think about humans the same way again. The rescue transport arrived exactly at dawn, piloted by Yoonji Oh, the human cultural attaché from the station. She landed the ship with practiced ease despite the ice-covered terrain. Everyone okay down there? Her voice crackled through the radio. All alive and accounted for, Jiho replied, helping Thek pack up the scientific equipment. The aliens moved slowly, still recovering from their ordeal. They watched in continued amazement as Jiho worked with normal energy levels, showing no signs of the extreme stress they had all endured. As they loaded their equipment onto the transport, Nara kept running medical scans on Jiho. This makes no sense, she muttered, staring at her readings. Your body shows no signs of cold stress. No tissue damage, no metabolic strain. It's like you spent the night in a comfortable room. I told you I felt fine, Jiho said, carrying a heavy case that the aliens were too weak to lift. Once everyone was safely aboard the transport, Yoonji began the flight back to the orbital station. During the journey, she listened with growing interest as the aliens described what had happened. Let me understand this correctly, she said, looking back at her passengers. You all nearly died from the cold, but Jiho not only survived, he saved your lives? More than survived, Zix said, his compound eyes reflecting the cabin lights. He worked normally throughout conditions that should have killed him instantly. He fixed our equipment, maintained our life support, and even continued his research. Garan added, his crystal body still dim from exhaustion. Thek shook his massive head in wonder. We brought him on this mission expecting to protect him. Instead, he protected us. Yoonji smiled. That sounds like a human to me. What do you mean? Nara asked. Well, Yoonji said thoughtfully, you have to understand how humans evolved. We didn't adapt to one specific environment like most species. We learned to adapt to whatever environment we found ourselves in. She activated the transport's educational display, showing images of Earth's diverse climates. Humans have lived successfully in tropical rainforests, Arctic tundra, high mountains, and ocean islands. We survived ice ages and heat waves. We learned to be flexible rather than specialized. The aliens studied the images with fascination. Your species evolved for cold climates, Yoonji continued. You have fur, modified metabolism, and specialized organs for generating heat. These work perfectly in your optimal temperature range. But humans? Jiho added, understanding where she was going. We evolved to figure things out as we go along. Exactly, Yoonji said. When humans get cold, we don't just use our fur or slow our metabolism. We move around more to generate heat. We use tools to create warmth. We solve problems. But how? Does that explain surviving minus 200 degrees? Zix asked. Yoonji looked thoughtful. Humans are persistence hunters. On Earth, we hunted animals by chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion. We didn't need to be faster or stronger, we just needed to keep going longer than they could. Endurance, Thek said slowly, understanding dawning in his blue eyes. Right. Human bodies are designed to function under stress for extended periods. We generate energy efficiently, we regulate temperature dynamically, and we maintain mental clarity under pressure. The transport docked with the orbital station, and soon they were all back in the familiar corridors. But even in the station's controlled environment, the aliens continued to treat Jiho with new respect. Word of what had happened spread quickly through the station. Dr. Kara Coldhaven, Nara's colleague, came to examine Jiho personally. I need to understand how this is possible, she said, running detailed scans. Our entire understanding of human physiology may be wrong. The results were startling. Jiho's body had adapted to the extreme cold by increasing heat production, improving circulation, and enhancing cellular resistance to freezing. Changes that should have taken generations of evolution had happened in just 3 days. Remarkable, Kara breathed, studying the data. It's like his body just learned how to survive. That's what humans do, Yunji said simply. We adapt. Commander, Thek called a formal meeting in the main briefing room. The entire station crew attended, including aliens from several different species who had heard about the surface mission. I want to make a formal statement, Thek announced, his voice carrying throughout the room. We have all underestimated human capabilities. He gestured toward Jiho, who was sitting quietly with the other humans. Dr. Park not only survived conditions that nearly killed us, he excelled in them. He worked while we could barely breathe. He solved problems while we struggled just to stay conscious. Murmurs of amazement rippled through the alien crew members. Therefore, Thek continued, I am recommending Dr. Park for the Confederation's Medal of Extraordinary Survival. This is the highest honor we can give for endurance under extreme conditions. The room erupted in applause from both humans and aliens. Furthermore, Thek added, I am formally requesting that all future extreme environment missions include human specialists. Clearly, we have been missing a valuable resource. After the ceremony, Jiho sat in his quarters writing a message to Dongjin Nam, his research partner back on Earth. You won't believe what happened, he typed. Turns out humans are a lot tougher than these aliens thought. They spend thousands of years evolving to survive specific conditions. We just figure it out as we go. He paused, thinking about his grandmother's stories again. Maybe that's our real strength. We're not the best at any one thing, but we're pretty good at everything. We adapt. A few days later, Jiho received a message from the Confederation Science Council. They wanted him to lead a new research program, studying human adaptability. The program would involve missions to the most extreme environments in known space. Interested? Yuna asked, reading the message over his shoulder. Jiho looked out his window at the ice planet below, where he had discovered something important about himself and his species. Definitely interested, he said. Within a week, the station's mission posting had been updated. Where it once read, Extreme Environment Research, Cold Adapted Species Only, it now read, Extreme Environment Research, Human Specialists Preferred. The change was small, but it represented something much larger. Throughout the Confederation, the perception of humans was shifting. They were no longer seen as fragile warm-worlders who needed protection. They were seen as the species that could go anywhere and survive anything. Jiho smiled as he read reports from other human scientists who were suddenly being recruited for missions to volcanic worlds, gas giant moons, and radiation-soaked asteroids. Places where specialized aliens couldn't survive, but humans somehow could. Not bad for a species that's supposed to be fragile, he said to himself. Outside his window, the stars beckoned with the promise of new worlds and new challenges, and for the first time since leaving Earth, Jiho felt truly excited about what lay ahead. After all, being human had turned out to be quite an advantage. The ice planet continued its slow rotation below, no longer looking threatening to him. It looked like just another place where humans could live and work if they needed to, and knowing humans someday they probably would.